Today's Focus Report takes us to Colombia. The conflict between the government and the FARC rebels might largely be over, but the traces of that long battle still scar the land. After Afghanistan, Colombia is the most densely landmined country, with the devices being responsible for thousands of deaths in recent decades. The military and an army of NGOs are now working hard to uproot the explosives, but it's not always an easy task. Our team has sent this report.
Somewhere beneath this thick vegetation lie hidden deadly traps.
We have to get to the hard ground underneath to use a metal detector.
Leonela is 19 years old. After some training, she became a deminer for Handicap International. The association is in charge of demining her village, Cajibio, in the Cauca province. Locals say rebel groups buried explosives all over this hill.
We believe these bombs were set to explode when the army passed by. These can do even more harm than anti-personnel mines.
Demining this plot of 1,000 square meters should take about a year. Like Leonela, most of the deminers were recruited from the surrounding community.
I'm helping the community. After that, they'll be able to farm, to build houses, to do whatever they want here.
Handicap International is clearing landmines in 7 municipalities over 3 provinces. The chief of operations, Aderito Ismael, is from Mozambique.
There were several groups involved in the conflict in Colombia with different interests, and mines have been used for different reasons. Sometimes to protect territory, sometimes to keep the enemies away, and sometimes just to block accesses.
This mined land is in the middle of a small village. It was long occupied by the ELN, the second largest rebel group in the country.
They had explosives. They assembled them over there, but never informed us.
On their faces, you can see concern each time a vehicle passes. The ELN has not put down their arms. Rebels wearing civilian clothing could be in the surrounding areas. Nevertheless, the villagers have decided to participate in the demining. They've designed a map marking the locations most likely to have landmines.
The red points are suspicious locations. Strategically, they paid close attention to crossroads, because that's where the army used to attack them. That's where they installed the mines.
The conflict is far from being resolved.
We've heard that there is still combat happening not far from here. People have seen armed groups. We're worried.
The ELN, FARC dissidents, and paramilitary groups continue to fight over the region. This atmosphere of fear makes the work of the deminers even harder.
Some vulnerable communities have suffered from all the sides involved in the conflict. And even now they don't, first they don't trust, and second they're afraid of whoever comes to collect information.
The NGO set up camp on the edge of the village of Cajibio. The demining of Colombian soil has hardly begun, and it's proving to be complicated.
I'm working in demining for more than 20 years, and normally I work with conventional mines, so you know them. But in Colombia it's different, because they can make an ordinance in anything. So you can see here, in the beginning, they were planting mines in a Coca-Cola water bottle where they put the explosive and the initiation mechanism in one syringe. So the same mine, if you just turn it upside down, you cannot pick up with one metal detector.
The rebels are not the only ones who planted explosive devices. Situated along the Pan-American Highway, Giovanni's farm was at the heart of the battle when Indian protesters blocked the road.
Buenos días, ¿cómo está? Buenos días, bien. Finalmente vimos para destruir, sí.
In 2013, the police used grenades to break up protests. One of these grenades was found by a child in his backyard.
He's my nephew, Daniel Alberto. He was the one who had the accident. He still has shards in his eyes.
Miraculously, he didn't lose his eyesight. Years later, another grenade was found in their coffee fields. The deminers are about to explode it from a distance, using a cable and a detonator.
We keep it. We're going to use it to train our staff so that they know what to do when they find one.
Since 1990, 11,500 victims of landmines and other explosives have been reported. 40% are civilians. Jose was 18 when his life was shattered by an explosive shell left in the road by the rebels.
The army was handling the explosive device and accidentally detonated it. Boom! A piece of shrapnel cut off my right leg. We've learned to live with it here. We've had to get used to living in the middle of the war and the middle of explosive devices.
Accidents often happen due to a lack of information.
Buenas tardes, ¿cómo están?
Awareness building about the dangers of landmines and other explosives is an essential part of the work for the NGOs.
We've met people who have told us, I picked it up, I brought it here, I moved it with a shovel, and I buried it here. Look.
Over time, war and its mortal devices have become a part of Colombia's daily life. The government hopes to clear the entire country of landmines by 2023, a challenge in a country that has not yet left its conflict behind.
Well, for more on those efforts to demine Colombia, I'm joined here in the studio by Pascal Drouot, a specialist in South American affairs and the president of the LatFran Association. Thank you very much for being with us here on France 24 once again. Just to start with, in your view, why did the rebels decide to plant so many landmines across Colombia? Why this device in particular and in such quantity?
Yes, well, because during 50 years, Colombia was living in a state of war, and it was an arm in this context to respond to the army threat in the ground, in the country, in the regions in Colombia where it was the conflict, armed conflict in the south of the country. And this is where, as we could see, the mine anti-personals are very strong. We must remember that 11,000 people has been victims of those types of arms, but they are very dangerous because, as we could see, they are handmade, and as well they are moving. In the time they are moving in the places, so it is very difficult to find those mines and to destroy them.
Just on that point, the Colombian government, as we saw at the end of that report, wants to have as many of these landmines removed by the year 2023. Just how realistic is that deadline?
I think that it is not. It is great, very great to begin, but of course Colombia lived during 50 years, as we were saying, in this context of internal conflict, first of all. Secondly, the peace agreement has been done 1 year ago with the FARC. FARC moved as a political party today with the same name. That's great. But of course, today the biggest challenge of the treaty of peace treaty is to realize him at the ground in the local places. And as we could see, it is very difficult because one word has been pronounced, trust, and trust must to be built and built trust. Confidence needs time. So it is very linked with this problem of the mines. That's very great to see the association as Handicap International making the huge work they are doing. But of course, I think it will require many time.
You say the FARC rebels, of course, have had that peace deal signed and sealed, so to speak. That conflict is largely over. But of course, there are other armed rebel groups that are still active in Colombia, of course, like the ELN.
Absolutely. And the dialogue with the ELN has been stopped. I think that we won't see any dialogue in the near future between the Colombian government and the ELN, that the other guerrilla in this country was very inspired by Guevara since the 60s. And the dialogue today doesn't exist and won't exist in the near future, because we have to remember that Colombia is entering in electoral period, parliamentary elections in March and the presidential in May, June.
And just a very brief final note, what in your view can be done in the future to bolster these peace processes and also, of course, ensure that this weapon, this landmine, isn't used in such a huge quantity in the future? Should, in your view, the international community be doing more to try and prevent the use of landmines?
Definitely, but it is absolutely linked with the presidential elections we will live into few months, few weeks. And of course, those elections will have many consequences on the treaty of peace with the FARC, with the dialogue with the ELN. And if it is a future on this political situation, for sure it is linked with the problem of the anti-personnel mines, and so we will have visibility to fight against those types of arms.
Okay, Pascal Drouot, the president of the Lat Fran Association, thank you very much for coming in to talk to us here on France 24 this Friday.